Welcome back everybody to another episode of the GC Informer. I'm Snowy, otherwise known as Count Fracula, bringing you the news, and I've no excuse for it being late. I've just been listening to music all day because I got 2 vinyls. They're great. And also for the lack of content, about the Epic Games environment, that's going to be covered in the newscast that's going to be coming out tomorrow. We discuss it at great length, so enjoy that. Otherwise, let's crack on with what I'm going to talk about today. For those of you who like, roller coastery, theme park management kind of games, you will also have heard of things like Zoo Tycoon and these wonderful games. I had Zoo Tycoon on the DS, and in fact, talking about this with Sully earlier has made me order Zoo Tycoon DS off of eBay, and that's besides the point, but you will remember those kind of games as well if you are into this kind of genre. You will also be aware though that the roller coaster genre, or the roller coaster game, has been brought back from the brink of oblivion by brilliant games like Parkizette and particularly Planet Coaster. And we also have, management games like Jurassic World Evolution. Now those last two are particularly pertinent because the developer Frontier Development have announced that they're going to be branching out into the zoo building genre. And I am incredibly excited, so much so that this is getting its own section in the news, a positive section at that, because I really want this game in my face right fucking now. It's going to be called Project Zoo, and it will apparently feature the most realistic animals in any game. That's quite the statement when you got to consider things like the Far Cry games have pretty realistic behaviours, if nothing else, for things like for the tigers and the panthers or whatever else they have in those games. So whether or not they mean in terms of behaviour or whether or not they mean in terms of look is a different story. But look-wise, they certainly have the capability to do it. If you look at the stuff they've done with Jurassic World Evolution, it's a fantastic looking game. I do hope for something with a little bit more depth than that. Planet Coaster has quite a lot of depth. Jurassic World, while it was technically a good game and it did a lot of interesting things, there was it was lacking a little bit in terms of what you could actually manage as such. There was a lot. The management was a lot shallower, maybe to appeal to a broader audience, but at the same time, I wanted more management in that game. Unlike Jurassic World though, this is apparently planned for a standalone PC release. No console release is planned for this game. I would say that's probably a good idea. Planet Coaster benefited immensely from just being on the PC. There's a lot more flexibility on PC with what you can do. And I think that Project Zoo, nearly forgot the name, well done me. Project Zoo will benefit enormously from that. And we apparently should be expecting it later this year. No particular release date, but I suspect it'll be about October, November time. And I would expect it to retail for about between £40 and £50, between $50 and $60. Because that's roughly where Frontier Development's games land in terms of that kind of price point. Regardless though, I'm really, really excited for this. Now I'm just going to roll a couple of things about the Switch into one story. The first thing I'm going to talk about is a little game that's coming out, and it's going to be Red Faction Guerrilla re-mars-tered. Yes, re-mars-tered. Ha 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 ha. It's a joke, isn't it funny? And they're going to be bringing that onto the Switch in July. July, that's not far away at all, which is a horribly depressing thought. But regardless, yes, the 2nd of July we will be seeing a Red Faction Guerrilla Remastered, which features the base game and the DLC. And on the PC and the consoles at least, on the consoles this was just marketed as a next-gen release. On the PC they actually got a full remastered port with better graphics and improvements to the engine and everything. And in fact on the PC, if you owned Red Faction Guerrilla on Steam, you got the remastered version for free, which is a lovely thing for them to do. Anyway, back to the Switch port though. Yes, it's going to be coming to the Switch in July, and it has a couple of notable features to it. First of all, If you are a fan of the motion sort of gyroscopic controls that the Switch implements in games like Pokemon Let's Go and even Darksiders, they will be implemented in some form in this game, presumably in the form of aiming, and maybe perhaps in the form of, like, you know, getting yourself lined up for where you're swiping on with your hammer, with Thor's hammer. The mighty Mjolnir in that game, it's great. Go play Red Faction and Guerrilla if you haven't, because it's quite fun. It's very shallow, but it's also very fun. Anyway, so there's going to be some motion control implemented, which you can turn off. It's an optional motion control, not a mandatory one, which I quite like. And the other notable feature is the fact that they're actually going to be adding a little option which you can choose between a game that looks lovely graphically or a game that has a performance enhancement. So presumably, if you pick the graphics option, the frame rate will be locked down to 30 and you will have a nicer looking game. But if you choose the performance option, very much like the PS4 Pro and similar things like that, you will end up with a higher frame rate at the cost of some visual fidelity. And to be honest, especially with the Switch, I think that's an option I very much appreciate. The Switch is obviously not as powerful as its console rivals, so to have that kind of option, certainly it increases the value proposition to certain people who value performance over graphics, and even those people who go, oh, the Switch games look terrible on the Switch. If people are like that, then you can choose the graphics option and it will look lovely for you. Also, multiplayer is going to be retained in some way, shape or form. Don't know if they'll have local multiplayer, and if they do, there's some really good local multiplayer modes in that game. So, keep an eye out for that in July. And the final little thing about the Switch then, it's about the revisions for the Switch, the slightly stripped down cheaper version and the enhanced version. And we've had a little bit more concrete details on the releases of those two consoles in a report by Bloomberg. And so this is backing up a lot of the things that we heard in March, but the cheaper variant is apparently expected to be launching at the end of June, although we've still had no confirmation from Nintendo about this as I'm speaking. Although last time I said something like that, we had confirmation literally 2 minutes after the video was published, so keep an eye out. There's probably going to be confirmation soon enough. And the version that's going to have enhanced performance is expected to be releasing towards the end of the year. It's a little bit more vague about that, but what we are more aware of now is that the performance increases that they are advertising, or the ones that are rumoured, are certainly not going to be huge hardware leaps, so don't expect there to be a change in the firmware. Basically, they're not going to move from a Tegra 1 to a Tegra Series 2 or anything like that. What I would expect is a larger storage capacity, perhaps slightly overclocking the graphics chip just to make it a little bit more graphically capable. Regardless, that's what we know, and expect to see something more about that towards the end of this month, and expect to see maybe something more about the enhanced version towards E3 kind of time. That brings us to the end of this episode of the GC Informer, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like, subscribe, share, whatever you fancy. Our social links are down in the description, with a link to our Discord where you can join in some chat with us. Stay tuned though to GameCast. We have news, reviews, podcasts, let's plays, lots of great content, and I will see you soon for something else.